Welcome to the battle for the Arctic. What's at stake as the ice melts away? As climate change accelerates, the thawing of Arctic ice presents a new battleground for nations, corporations, and indigenous communities alike. From rising sea levels that threaten coastal cities to new shipping routes opening up lucrative, yet contested waterways, the stakes have never been higher. Join us as we explore the geopolitical tensions, environmental risks, and the pressing challenges facing the Arctic region in a rapidly changing world. 1. Accelerated climate change. The Arctic is warming at an alarming rate, nearly 4 times faster than the global average. This phenomenon, known as Arctic amplification, is primarily driven by the melting ice, which exposes dark ocean water. Unlike ice, which reflects sunlight, ocean water absorbs heat, accelerating the warming process. This creates a vicious cycle that not only affects the Arctic but also has global repercussions. The increased warming contributes to extreme weather patterns, impacting agriculture, water supply, and human health worldwide. As the Arctic becomes a barometer for climate change, understanding and mitigating its impacts is more crucial than ever. 2. Rising sea levels. The melting of Arctic ice is a major contributor to rising sea levels, posing a significant threat to coastal cities and low-lying countries. As glaciers and ice sheets disintegrate, they release vast amounts of water into the oceans, leading to floods and displacement. Coastal communities, from Miami to Manila, face the risk of being submerged, forcing millions of people to relocate. This not only disrupts lives but also imposes economic burdens on nations, as they grapple with the costs of infrastructure damage and resettlement. The rising sea levels serve as a stark reminder of the urgent need for global action to address the root causes of climate change. 3. New shipping routes. As the Arctic ice melts, new shipping routes such as the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route are becoming viable. These routes significantly reduce the distance and time required for shipping between Asia, Europe, and North America. While this offers economic benefits in terms of reduced fuel costs and increased trade efficiency, it also raises geopolitical tensions. Nations are vying for control over these strategic routes, leading to disputes over territorial waters and navigation rights. The opening of these routes is a double-edged sword, offering both opportunities and challenges in the realm of international trade. 4. Oil and gas reserves. Beneath the Arctic's icy surface lies a treasure trove of natural resources, including an estimated 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its untapped natural gas. As the ice recedes, access to these resources becomes increasingly feasible, sparking a race among countries like Russia, the US, Canada, and Norway. However, the pursuit of these resources carries significant environmental risks. Drilling operations in the Arctic's harsh and remote environment are fraught with challenges, including the risk of oil spills and the disturbance of fragile ecosystems. The quest for Arctic resources is a high-stakes gamble with potentially devastating consequences. 5. Geopolitical tension. The Arctic is rapidly becoming a stage for geopolitical rivalry, as nations compete for territorial claims and military dominance. Russia has significantly expanded its military presence in the Arctic, establishing bases and deploying troops. In response, NATO countries are increasing their patrols and conducting joint military exercises. The Arctic's strategic importance, due to its proximity to major global powers and its wealth of resources, makes it a hotbed of tension. Diplomatic efforts to ensure peace and cooperation are critical, as the potential for conflict looms large in this rapidly changing region. 6. Threats to indigenous communities. The melting ice in the Arctic is not just a global issue. It has profound local impacts on indigenous communities whose livelihoods are intricately tied to the environment. Traditional hunting and fishing practices, which have sustained these communities for generations, are being disrupted as ice conditions change. This threatens food security and cultural heritage, as the very way of life of these communities is at risk. Indigenous voices are increasingly calling for their rights and knowledge to be recognized in decision-making processes. Ensuring their participation and respecting their traditions is crucial in the broader discourse on Arctic governance. 7. Disruptions to marine ecosystems. The Arctic's unique marine ecosystems are under threat as the ice melts away. Species such as polar bears, walruses, and seals depend on sea ice for survival, using it as a platform for hunting and resting. As their habitat diminishes, these species face population declines and potential extinction. The loss of ice also affects the entire food chain, from microscopic algae to fish and marine mammals. Conservation efforts are urgently needed to protect these fragile ecosystems and the biodiversity they support. The fate of Arctic wildlife is a poignant indicator of the broader environmental challenges facing the region. 8. Increased risk of oil spills. The prospect of increased oil exploration in the Arctic raises significant environmental concerns, particularly the risk of oil spills. The Arctic's harsh and remote conditions make it extremely difficult to contain and clean up spills, posing a serious threat to marine life and coastal habitats. The potential for accidents is compounded by the lack of infrastructure and emergency response capabilities in the region. As the push for resource extraction intensifies, the environmental risks must be carefully weighed against economic interests. Preventing disasters and ensuring sustainable practices should be at the forefront of any Arctic development strategy. 9. China's growing influence. Although not an Arctic nation, China has declared itself a near-Arctic state and is investing heavily in the region. Through research, infrastructure development, and strategic partnerships, China is positioning itself as a key player in Arctic affairs. This has intensified geopolitical competition, as other nations are wary of China's growing influence. China's interest in the Arctic is driven by economic opportunities, such as access to resources and new shipping routes. However, its involvement also raises questions about sovereignty, environmental stewardship, and the balance of power in the region. 10. International cooperation versus conflict. The Arctic Council, composed of Arctic nations, serves as a platform for promoting peaceful cooperation and sustainable development. However, the growing economic and military interests in the region pose challenges to this cooperation. As nations pursue their strategic objectives, the potential for conflict increases. Diplomatic efforts and international agreements are essential to ensure that the Arctic remains a zone of peace and collaboration. Balancing economic ambitions with environmental protection and indigenous rights will be critical in shaping the future of this contested region.